Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's going to be going over some updates on the car market, and I suppose today's video is good news for consumers and not so good news for car dealerships. Before we get into this video though, as always, if you're going to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below, and then some of the information provided in today's video comes from Cox Automotive. Let's get into it. So the big headline is that new vehicle transaction prices have decreased year over year. Now, month over month, there's actually a slight increase in new vehicle transaction prices, but the year over year trend is that they have decreased. Now, this is not because automakers have all of a sudden decreased their MSRP prices. That has actually not happened whatsoever. MSRP prices on average have slightly increased year over year, but what has also increased at the same time is dealer discount and manufacturer incentive. And that's why we're seeing these transaction prices decrease year over year, even though the MSRP prices have not decreased. Now, the brands that have the biggest decreases in terms of price, Tesla 20%, which is crazy, Buick 6.4%, Land Rover 6%, Nissan 5.7%, and then the brands that have the biggest increases, Dodge 11.2%, Ram 10.5%, Audi 7.8%, and GMC 7.8%. Now, the thing that I find interesting about these brands is that the price decreases or increases don't necessarily signify that the product is selling well or not selling well. Because you might think, oh, if Tesla has the biggest price decrease, that must mean that those aren't selling well and that they're decreasing the prices to help them sell well. And that's not the case. Tesla's having an amazing year. Buick, they're actually also having a pretty good year as well. Land Rover, I would say, yeah, volume softened on some of their product. And so I think that's why the price decrease happened with that brand, but still they're actually having a pretty good year. Nissan, again, things aren't too rough for them. But then the brands with price increases where you think that, okay, they're going to increase their price because super hot. Dodge, definitely not. They have the biggest day supply in the market. Ram also has a really big day supply. Audi's actually doing good and GMC's doing good. So yeah, just because they have a price decrease or increase doesn't necessarily signify the product's doing poorly or if it's doing well on the market. So the next thing that I think is very interesting from this segment is luxury cars. Luxury cars are seeing huge gains in the US market. Now, they've seen the biggest price decrease year over year compared to the overall car market. And so this has kind of seemingly led more people to buy luxury cars. The market share in the US right now is at 20%. This is the highest that the luxury car segment has been in the US market. Now, something to note is that Tesla is still counted as a luxury car. I don't think it should be considered a luxury car, but it is counted in luxury car sales. So, you know, the luxury car market is kind of being pushed up by Tesla with their huge volume increases. So kind of take that 20% with a grain of salt. Now, the big thing is with luxury car pricing versus non-luxury car pricing. So the average brand new car, $48,000 roughly for the transaction price. Luxury car, $63,000. Non-luxury is about $44,000. And so you can see, you know, kind of how things are weighted. And then with EVs, the average price is about $52,000. So EVs are closing in on being priced at what the average brand new car is priced at, but they're still quite a bit, you know, $8,000 above the average transaction price of non-luxury cars. So EVs are still considered, I guess, in between luxury and non-luxury at this point when it comes to pricing. And so that's not the full story though when it comes to numbers. The next thing is going to be auto loans. So credit has tightened. What this means is that lenders are being pickier about who they're willing to give loans to. And so the big figure here is that all loans decreased by 0.8% in November. So that means that credit availability slightly declined in November. And so now I want to talk about what this means for the overall market moving forward. So first off, it looks like automakers on the surface appear to have a kind of like strategy of just temporary like price declines, if that makes sense. If they really believed that the market was in a big downtrend, then they would probably decrease their MSRPs and not just do incentives. Incentives are a way of a manufacturer to basically temporarily decrease prices, but not have that as the new set price, which, I mean, you can see from a business perspective, it can seem smart because it means that, well, if things change, then they can just, boom, remove the incentives and then the price goes back up. But at the same time, it does cause a lot of confusion for customers, especially when customers are researching cars, because when customers research cars, yeah, they might know there's incentives, but most of the time they just look at the MSRP price. And so if your MSRP price is way higher, right, and they don't know about the discounts on the surface, then that can cause some issues where a customer will go and buy from another brand. And frankly, I actually do see a lot of that happening on the market. The example I will use is with Ram versus Chevy. So Chevy doesn't really have a whole lot of incentives. They do have some incentives, but with their trucks, for the most part, when I talk to dealers, it seems like some of the packages are selling for MSRP. Some of them, there's some discount off of MSRP, but it's not big. Whereas with Ram, there are huge discounts off of MSRP. And so when you look at the transaction prices with a Chevy and a Ram, in most cases, you can actually buy the Ram for less money because of how big the rebate is from the manufacturer and also how big the dealer discount is with those vehicles. But when people research both of these trucks, they see that the Ram MSRPs are higher on average than the Chevy MSRPs. And so then people go in and buy from Chevy because they assume that the vehicle is going to be lower. So that's just a real world example of how putting bigger rebates and not decreasing MSRP can have a negative effect on a manufacturer. But moving forward, I think that this is just a continuation of the trend of the car market going into what I am calling the quote unquote car market recession, because again, we are nowhere near pre-pandemic levels when it comes to new car sales with volume, right? Prior to the pandemic, 17 plus million units sold per year. We're gonna crack like 15 million units this year, so we're still down by like a couple million units when it comes to sales. And things are already starting to pull back. Inventories are already starting to balloon to what they were like prior to the pandemic. And so that means that like demand is lower today than what it was prior to the pandemic. And we were entering into what a lot of people were calling a car recession back in 2019. As 2020 was going on, everyone was really concerned about the state of the car market because of how few vehicles were being sold compared to the amount of inventory that there was available and the general downward trend with people buying new cars. And so, yeah, I see this as extremely troubling for the overall health of the new car market. Again, you look at just all of the data points. Prices have come down, but they haven't come down enough to really bring up demand. And this is happening at the same time that it's harder and harder for people to get loans, and interest rates, they are as high as they have been in well over a decade. And so affordability is still at an all-time low because of these higher interest rates, even though there's bigger discounts. The discounts just aren't big enough to offset all the extra costs. So anyways, let me know what you guys think about this whole situation, and let me know if you think, like my thoughts on this, if this is basically car market recession that we're going to be seeing, starting now, and who knows how long it'll last for, but moving into next year. I'll see you.